We are now in the month of May, and Revenge of the Sith is 20 years old. It had a brief return to theaters this past week in some parts of the country, and it actually made a pretty good chunk of change for a 20-year-old movie. I want to discuss 20 years of Revenge of the Sith, and I want to talk to you about like what was going on 20 years ago in my life and how I sort of connect with Revenge of the Sith. So, Revenge of the Sith that came out in 2005 is a lot of people's favorite Star Wars movie. It's my favorite of the prequels. I still like the original trilogy more, but Revenge of the Sith to me is jam packed with a lot. Like there's a lot of story in that movie, and if there was one criticism that I would give it, it's that I think it should have been 2.5 or 3 hours. Now, normally I would never want a movie to be longer, but there's so much that happens in Revenge of the Sith that it's almost at like breakneck speed, but it doesn't feel like how Rise of Skywalker does. This has a bit more of a coherent plot. Well, much more of a coherent plot. The movie has 5 lightsaber duels, more than any other Star Wars film, and they're all very different and spectacular in their own way. So I would have loved like a 3-hour cut of this. And there's been talk of a 4-hour cut because the opening sequence when they save Palpatine, Anakin and Obi-Wan, like before editing was like a full hour. It was a very long sequence. Shortening that was probably smart. But the reason why I wanted this to be longer, and keep in mind this movie was rated PG-13, whereas all the other Star Wars movies were PG because of the scenes of Anakin burning. It's just very graphic. The reason as to why I've always wanted it to be longer is because if you go back to 2005, let me take you back to 2005, right? Revenge of the Sith came out and I was hyped for it. The trailers looked great. It looked and resembled a lot more aesthetically to the original trilogy, and this was going to be the real bridge, but here's the thing. This was the final Star Wars movie. In 2005, there was absolutely zero hint that Lucas would make 3 more anytime soon or that he would sell to Disney. Yes, there are interviews with various people that discussed Lucas at one time wanting to do a 9-chapter saga, but during this time, it was pretty well established by George Lucas that this would be the final Star Wars movie. And that's kind of a big deal. Now, in 2008, they released the Clone Wars film, but that was more like a pilot for an animated film. This is the last live-action Star Wars movie to close out the saga. Something that needed to happen because A New Hope, Empire, and Return of the Jedi are episodes 4, 5, and 6. So going into those, you feel like you missed part of the story. So the prequels had to do that. So you have to think about it from that perspective. There was nothing about Rogue One or Solo. This was the last one. And what people forget because of the bastardization of Star Wars that the Disney Corporation has done is that Star Wars used to be the event movie. Before the Dark Knight series, before the MCU, Star Wars was the event movie. This is the movie that everyone went to go see. In fact, I will share this about The Phantom Menace before we get back to episode 3. When I went to go see The Phantom Menace, I went to a midnight release. And in those days, a midnight release was actually at midnight. Nowadays, movies come out the Thursday before at like 2 p.m. I got my ticket to Thunderbolt for a 2 p.m. showing Thursday, which is supposed to be a midnight showing, but they don't even do them at midnight anymore. They do them earlier. And when I went to go see Phantom Menace in '99, this was the first time I can remember there being like security guards at the movie theater, and they were organizing the lines, and I had never seen anything like this before. Like, this was crazy. And in that same theater, I would go on to see Pokemon, the first movie. I saw a bunch of Batman movies there, Ninja Turtles. This was a movie theater that sadly no longer exists. It was replaced by a car dealership many years ago. It was called the Hillsboro 8. I love that movie theater, man. But anyways, Revenge of the Sith, I saw it at a different theater with a buddy of mine and his girlfriend. And then we went out to have lunch. I don't remember the name of the place we went. But Revenge of the Sith, man, what a spectacle. So many Star Wars battles, like lightsaber duels. The movie opens with a space duel, right in the middle of the Clone Wars. And before this came out, let's not forget the Cartoon Network 2003 Clone Wars series. That was something that was supposed to be seen as the bridge between episodes 2 and 3. And I still think that 2003 Clone Wars series, the one that looks like Samurai Jack, I still think that one is worth seeing today. It's really good. And I know that the other Clone Wars, the one Dave Filoni did, was a more complete version of the story. I really like how they did that 2003 one. And for a long time, that was my canon. Like, that movie was part of the canon. Or, I'm sorry, that show was part of the movie canon. So I think going into it, like, the movie did leak, and I did read up on what the plot was going to be before I saw it. I don't do that all the time anymore. I know that I've done that here on YouTube and this channel and my other channel where I've covered spoilers, but I had to see because there was a lot of fake leaks that had come out back then. There was a guy by the name of Super Shadow. Some of you will remember him. He was like the original guy with zero. Like, he was the original clickbait liar. This dude was claiming to be friends with George Lucas and dropping like all these hints. And at one time he dropped the plot for Revenge of the Sith, or it wasn't even called that. It was episode 3. And he did this. It was fake, but he did this wild movie where like Anakin wins an award at the beginning of the film, and then Darth Zeo Jade appears to seduce him. I actually remember this, yo. This is 20 years ago. 21 years ago. It might have been even earlier. And I remember in that story, they established a Sith council, like a Jedi council, but then by the end of the film, Palpatine and Vader together killed all the other Sith and kept control for themselves. It was actually a pretty interesting story, I'm not going to lie, but it was fake. And but then he did put up a summary that was pretty close to what we got in Revenge of the Sith. However, years later, turns out he got that from somebody on the Force.net message board who was probably somebody who worked on the film who put out the thread. But it didn't matter. I still wanted to see it. Now, like I said, it's my favorite prequel. I think one of the issues is the overabundance of CGI and blue screen. I think it does hurt the film. I've always been more of a practical effects guy. There's no real sets here. Everything looks too clean. It doesn't look lived in. I just don't like that aesthetic. I never have. I mean, that's never going to change. And with the fact that it was shot on digital, they can't even like upscale it. They would have to redo everything. And so that's distracting, I would say. But the scene where the Emperor becomes the Emperor, the lightning goes in his own face, and, the Force is strong with you. A powerful Sith you will become. That scene gave me chills, bro. Episode 3 is Ian McDiarmid's like magnum opus as the Emperor, dude. He never played the Emperor as good as he did in that movie, or even when he was pretending to be the brittle old Senator, or well, Chancellor Palpatine. Are you threatening me, Master Jedi? You know, the Senate will decide your fate. I am the Senate. He was incredible, dude. Just incredible. Natalie Portman didn't really do much in the movie. She was used as a plot device, kind of wasted. She did a lot more in the first two movies, but she was also pregnant. So when you have a character that's pregnant, that really can hinder what the character can do. So to me, that made sense. Obi-Wan, it's almost like parts of the movie kind of make you think there's like a love triangle going on. Like I've heard people say that. I don't think that's the case though. Like I've never thought that myself. Obi-Wan, when he's inquiring about her pregnancy and Anakin being the father, Obi-Wan himself, I think at that point felt like he would have probably had Anakin's back if the council had found out. But the thing about this movie is it is a very Shakespearean tragedy because when you watch it, you know what's going to happen. It's a prequel. You know where this is going to end up. You know people are going to die. The death count in this movie is the highest of any Star Wars movie of the original six. Maybe of any. I don't know, because Starkiller Base blew up like 5 planets. But the point is that, and this one, Alderaan probably had more people on it. You know what I mean? But this one, as far as like Jedi, they get smoked. And the Jedi Purge, I do wish they spent a bit more time on that. This is why I was hoping for a longer cut. Because there was probably a lot more stuff with Anakin dueling. And there is. I mean, we know from Nick Gillard releasing stuff that there's more scenes of Anakin dueling with Jedi inside the temple that either didn't make the movie or were used in that holocron scene when Obi-Wan and Yoda are looking at Anakin. So, like, all that stuff said, Anakin versus Obi-Wan, the longest and most epic lightsaber duel in history. Battle of the Heroes from John Williams. John Williams manages to create an incredible, upbeat, unbelievable piece of music that somehow manages to be exciting but also tragic. Dun, 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 dun. Like, it's so like it makes you feel things. In my opinion, I think this movie probably has the best John Williams soundtrack. And I only say that because this movie incorporates themes from all the other movies. And this is supposed to be the last one. So you'll hear some of the Yoda theme. You'll hear some of the Leia and Luke themes a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, you'll hear bits and pieces of everything. Duel of the Fates is even in this film. And that's great. Count Dooku, I wish they did more with him. I'm glad the Clone Wars did. General Grievous I always liked because he reminds me of the Shredder. With like the kind of like the muffly voice, or like later on we had Bane. In The Dark Knight Rises, he's kind of like an imposing figure with the 4 lightsabers, and then of course Obi-Wan just jobs him out. I mean, just in the lightsaber duel, quickly chops off his arms. There was a lot of cool stuff in this movie. There was a lot of... I thought it was a worthy close to the 6-part Star Wars saga. And it was really the final chance for people to see a new Star Wars movie in theaters until, of course, Force Awakens came out in 2015. I think that my opinion on the prequels has not really changed, in the sense of I really enjoy Revenge of the Sith. It's a great, fun little movie, and I always have a good time watching it. It's very easy to put on in the background or just watch at any point when it could come on TV and you could watch it right then and there from wherever. the middle, the beginning. And it's hard to make a movie like that. You know, it really is. Even some of the OT doesn't really have that vibe. You know, some of them you have to watch from the start. But the movie has a really energetic pace. And yeah, it's a good time, man. 20 years since the final George Lucas Star Wars movie. And it's getting its flowers. So people still appreciate what George Lucas did. And I think Disney flubbing up Star Wars really made people say, like, man, you don't know what you've got till it's gone, right? Like, George Lucas got a lot of crap for the prequels, but this is a thing where Disney and how poorly they did the sequels kind of made Lucas, in a way, kind of a martyr, you know, in the fandom's eyes. So, yeah, may the 4th be with you. Take care.